Haley community. So today it's about actually something I worked on for pretty long. I held that back to ever show that to someone because I think it's dangerous knowledge. And it actually doesn't give you any power, like you can't really help people with it. And if you know it, there's actually dangers with it. It's about Moira's law. It's topic in psychology. Sorry for the weird letters. Like this is a law in psychology I believe could be true. It states a certain amount of ideas and hypotheses that in my mind always comes to be true. But the problem with it is if it gets into the wrong hands at any given moment that is wrong, it causes more trouble than it does help or causes intense harm even. So what is psychology? Well, first, there really was a good reason for holding this back. Like, I try to explain that right now. It didn't give any possibility of preventing any harm in the world. If told at any moment, like right now it really doesn't matter. But if told at any moment, evil people would get it on their hands and would know how to manipulate people in a way that is actually bad. Like, really bad in my mind. If you know how to manipulate people. And I do, for a certain degree, know how to manipulate people. I don't use it. I don't like manipulation, but I know how the stuff works to a degree. I don't want to prove that. If anyone asks me ever to manipulate the person, I tend to not ever do that, unless a really bad situation. Without further ado, it's from my spiritual mom and dad, my spiritual guide that's next to me, and also me, but developed by them, and for a good reason held back for a long time, and developed further to ensure safety for a lot of people and also us. So, Moira's law. Psychology, what is it? The intersecting of the spirit's mind with actions put forth in one's life, meaning everything you do that comes into your idea of experience or your pathway of life is something that interacts from your spirit's mind or the spirits or the soul. Well, the soul not really, the soul is the experiencer, but bringing forth the spirit. So here's already the problem. With Moira's law, you can interact with that if you know how to manipulate it. That's why all these weird letters are there. If you watch the video further, I doubt it will be possible. Maybe crazy or not, but it's psychologically written, this whole stuff, because you do see the letters. You can't unsee them. Like this, huh? So, examination of will and belief, that's what psychology is. It's the will, and not to believe, but also believe. Like, if you look at a certain set of ideas and manifests and anything that comes forth from one's spirit, you, in psychology, in my mind, have one job. You want to decipher what is will of a person and what is belief of a person. Like, how does the person view the world and how does the person enact with the world? That's the two sets in psychology. There's more that come from this, but it's based on love and hatred. It's basically this. So, further, it's deciphering also of real to unreal, which comes from this as a set of archetypes behind it. So the first one is the actions in the life path. Second one is the actions in the path of soul, meaning what is real, what is unreal. If you ever had a schizophrenic experience, you know how that feels. So what you try to do then in psychology to, for example, cure someone from depression because that person has lost a teddy or something like it, right? Has lost, if the person, I never lost my teddy, never, but if the person maybe just lost, I don't know, for example, an exam, how to get the person over the fear of failing the exam again or something like it. It's very difficult. It's a simple example in psychology for a betterment that doesn't concern any psychological illness, as people would call it, or mental dysfunctionality. Meaning, these are the two sets of ideas in psychology. It's positive and negative psychology. The one you do to look at the world, the negative one, and the positive one to better the spirit of a person, the soul of a person, the conscious experience in the negative, meaning the real. So Moira, not Moirai, but Moire. Moire, meaning it's a derivation from the Greek myth of Moirai. It's not a being of fate, but this time a being of reverted fate. So they don't cut the lifespan of others, they cut their own life to the time of death. So they can influence something. I'm not going to get further into that. It's reverted fate, and it's a being of time of death in the cut of their life to revert to fate, in the fate of power to the death of being. So the law. What is a law? Well, laws of life, of living, of spirit, of immortality in spirit and psi and whatever. A hypothesis proven in any case to result in some paradigm or consequence. Meaning, once you establish a law in any science, and if you want to call psychology a science, which I hate to call it that way, because people are not an experiment. People are not something that you should regard as something that brings you truth. If someone tells you something, okay, you can view that and evaluate that. But psychologists tend to view people as subjects. That's why I really don't like psychology. So for psychology, a law is really weird to define because it's not, in my mind, a science. Anyone who tries to make it a science is actually evil in my mind. So it doesn't matter. Still, if you want to consider it a science, which it has scientific aspects and ideas and also constructs in it, because you want to have something to predict something, then you also need a hypothesis proven in any case to result in something that you can rely on. Meaning a law. They always puts forth that consequence or always that paradigm. Meaning a set of consequences that are included. It's one is an intersecting paradigm, or in the opposite of a determined paradigm, which is a consequence. So deduction and induction. So what is Moira's law, an idea for law for psychology? Well, premises. The human mind is variable, or the mind is variable. Meaning you can change yourself to a degree. For example, forgive a person for not being able to do something when you didn't get something to eat. Not that difficult, right? You got something to eat in the end, maybe you can forgive the person. You didn't get something to eat and starved, okay. You starved to death, more difficult if you live after, but maybe still comprehensible with the right knowledge if it's true. Point being, all these examples are useless right now. The mind is variable in the sense that you can change yourself. Like forgiveness, not always possible. But what I mean is, if I go to play with the light of the night sky, meaning I put a laser pointer in the sky and just think, oh, this is funny, this looks cool, in the dust, in the shadows. Like if you ever had a laser pointer in the morning dust when it's still dark outside, like in the sense next to a lake or something, like a tree, forest, or anything, then you see that the mind becomes variable. It views certain aspects of nature and reality in different ways. Like even if you just blow smoke out and put a laser pointer to it, you view that certainly the mind imagines things. You can also take a psychedelic substance and you more or less stay the same, but you experience something that is even further making your mind malleable to your own desires. And this variability is always there in the mind, I believe. To a degree, that is. The spirit is bringing forth the conscious experiments as a second premise, meaning the spirit, even if it would result from the body, which is not my spiritual belief. I believe the body comes forth from the spirit to a degree of laws that are enforced by something in the spirit as well as the environment, and every spirit is different. But meaning my body, for example, I believe the body is not really real. I think it's a conscious hallucination as well. I can cut my body, yes. My spirit feels that cut, yes, true. All of that true. That doesn't mean the body is matter in the sense that it's real. And this is a really weird belief, because it doesn't change anything. If my body gets cut and it's not real, I still feel the whole experience. It's still bad. If I die, it's still bad. My body still was manifested, so I still have a body to lose. Doesn't mean the body is real in the sense of true matter. So here we come at the point. Some people argue that the mind and the body bring forth the spirit. I suggest it's the other way around, in interconnection and intertwined with the desires and the ideas and the kind of timeless constructs in the spirit. So experience is unreal at start, meaning everything we experience, even if the body would produce the mind, which is difficult to prove even if brain exists. Like, it's still very, very difficult to prove that hypothesis of materialism. Really difficult. The philosophy failed for that for the last 400 centuries. And before that, there were a lot of ideas to prove that the mind could actually be the reason and reasoning the body. But nonetheless, experience is something that has no set of ideas in the framework of non-variability, to the degree that it has a core essence to some idea that makes it unvariable. So like a man who is a certain type of man can be a woman, but a certain type of man may, I don't know, that has something to do with fluid thought patterns, which I don't have and my spiritual parents don't have. So that I can't really make any assumptions about. Bad example. What I mean is, experience is unreal. For example, I envision myself to like a certain color. I can't really do that. I can't really do that. If I see red, I have a certain association with it. I like red because of I like all the colors. My favorite color is something between, something between green, red, and something in the ultraviolet, I believe. So, again, weird that I speak about that, because if you combine certain color sets, even if you can't see ultraviolet, you get a certain color that results in something you can actually perceive again, in my mind. Maybe that's also a bad hypothesis, but let's skip the bad hypothesis. What I mean is, if I have a certain color and that's my favorite color, I can't really make myself have a favorite color. But I can decide for my second favorite color. Like, the first one will always be the best one. And if I ever get a color that is put over the first color, in any case, like, if I say, okay, I like red really a lot, but I also decide to have blue as the same idea and the same value of, okay, blue is maybe a bad idea, but maybe yellow, like yellow and red and all the colors are same beautiful, then I do have a problem with my mind and I will end up dead. If I continue like that with certain aspects of my life that are valuable, for example, cheating on your spouse. If you really love your spouse and your husband or your wife, and you do that in once, you will end your life. In most cases, in my mind. If you really love that person. Like, really, really love that person. Also, bad example right now. So, conductors, what is it? It's a call of the ocean, meaning not explaining conductors further because that is also dangerous. It also is too much explained already, but I need to include that. So a flaw of mind causes the ideas of it to tremble to a stream. Not a conscious breaking point, not any of it. What I mean is, you have a flaw in your mind and your ideas start to dissolve, to disconcern, to something where your ideas become almost similar. And they stream in a flow of different rivers that interact and intersect with each other, but yet are not the same set of ideas. And therefore, all ideas suddenly seem like they have almost equal value. Almost equal value. Meaning, for example, if I think too much about what is my favorite color and I'm not certain anymore it's something between green, red and ultraviolet, but question that all the time, suddenly all the alternatives seem also possibly real as long as I see the first alternative as the best one. And then I can variable my mind into things that I may not even want to be. That's what I mean with Call of the Ocean. You suddenly are in your experience of guiding yourself. For example, if I like chocolate and Coca-Cola, and I suddenly think these are my favorite drink and my favorite food, and I decide now that bread is my favorite food as next to chocolate. Or even a less favorite example, like I decide for my conscious to be guided by music, and suddenly I decide also art by like painting is the new next important thing to guide my conscious, as well as music and as well as reading books. You can do that to a certain degree with some sets, but then if you consider music the most important part to guide your life and your experience and your sense of life, and you devalue that by asking yourself the question, is it correct, is it correct, is it correct, is it correct? You suddenly have the problem that your conscious doesn't get any further and stagnates, and even worse, loses its free will to a degree. So you're incapable of suddenly acting towards what you wish to desire and therefore being yourself. But you don't vanish. So, conclusion and argument. If the variables in the human mind cause a predetermined fate, meaning I do something and that causes something in the future by the variabilization of my conscious experience to be unreal, and then influencing the new unreal to become and start to be a part of what I assign myself to be, by assigning to new elaborated values, then there must be a constant of manifest. So what is a constant of manifest? I try to explain that right now. It's what you believe yourself and know yourself to be true as core fundamental values. But not just values, core fundamental you. Not just being, core fundamental you. So if your spouse is whatever defines you, and that is not bad. It's no way bad. If the spouse and love of your life defines you and everything you are, then that is the only reason you should work for something. And if they ever lose that, you can kill yourself. Or you can go crazy or whatever. Like you may not even be able to not go crazy. If you lose a certain aspect in your conscious that is the core you, like you, and that is from the outside, you may not even be able to prevent certain forthcomings from this idea and set of ideas. That's why it's so important to know you, to know yourself. And if you act against that, you act against the moral laws of life. Meaning, if you would say suddenly, okay, this is rationally bad, then you disregard your emotions, which are your value, because you are value and worthy of life, because you are a being, as long as you don't hurt someone for no reason, and being good in a sense, and try to help people and bring forth people, but in knowledge, but that's not even necessary, then you should not suffer, at least not in any case that is unjustified, because unjustified would mean that you caused unnecessary harm to good people, or maybe even just caused harm to good people by sense of violence or anything that is unforgivable, in the sense of negating their true self, in the sense that it's rationally explainable and was conjured up by them disregarding your true you, or by not just a psychosis or flaw of mind. But then again, it gets possible that that is even a danger. So that's why it's so important that people speak to each other, I think, that they know something that is the core you, but not a lot. Like if I tell you, my favorite and my all and my everything is my spouse, my wife, then that needs to be respected. Everything else can then be talked further and negotiated. The rest really can't be. Like, I want to be myself and I'm sexually exclusive to my wife, then that is the rule for my life, and anyone who violates that by touching me is evil. Or anyone who tries to steal my things that I make for my life and my wife, because rights of living are also to have things to guide yourself in, and things are possibly energy of the spirit projected into it, even just as a conscious experience, if true. So that's a rule of life, and the second one, the true you. So two basic moral values. If you have the set of ideas, my things belong to me, which I create for my life, and that belongs to me and my spouse, and that all belongs to all of us, because she's my everything, and I hopefully am hers, otherwise it would be really bad. And then you get the idea. Most of the time that's true. People don't usually cheat on each other unless they're fucking psychopaths. But that's also good, because then you know you can't win it anyway, but also if you know your spouse in a perfect way, you won't really have that problem. So if you know the soul of your spouse, you really don't have the problem to think that that person is disregarding you in that sense. So now we come to Moira's law. This is already dangerous to explain everything of this. Why I did this, all the sexual stuff, I'm sorry for that, is because Moira's law is actually an epiphany that could drive people insane and evil in my mind. But I need to explain it. It's for one time useful, and I will need to protect myself against manipulation if anyone ever knows me, and people know who I am on this channel, so please don't be too angry for me holding that back for 27 or 28 years, just because I think it is not good to have the knowledge of that, but I think certain types of people will figure that out in a couple of years, and I don't have much influence, but maybe some people get this, and it's then at least set there, so that has a reason that I put it out now, that I will explain possibly later at some point. So, Moira's law. The experience of a soul is always encompassed by its vision of itself. I did already explain that, that's one. Has Roman numbers, that has a reason. If at any given circumstance the idea of manifest change, the variables of stream do too. Meaning, if your manifest of yourself, or better said, the manifest of your life, or any manifest you put forth by the variables that are brought forth by the constant, change, the variables of which was putting this forth do too change. And the variables of stream are intertwined with the parts to change. And Moira's law states, in any circumstance of existence, conscious evaluates coincidence to be calculated out. Meaning, variables of stream are intertwined with the parts to change. So, your constant is there. That's how you can protect someone. You know the constant of the person, you can protect that person. The variables from that constant change with the stream of thoughts that's brought forth by the manifest that is in the parts to change, encompassed by the calculation out in the vision of itself of the soul to be intertwined with the circumstances in the law. So, problem now. Why can't you help people in different circumstances, even if you know that? I want to clarify that. Like if a person is highly depressive, or any circumstances at all, if you act against Moira's law, you will change the constant. And then the person becomes the ocean and is gone. So, second and last thing, XOI. Non-existence, belief, changes the constant to the variables. Meaning, you don't just calculate coincidence out in any circumstance of existence. Conscious devaluates coincidence, also not coincidence, not coincidence, but coincidence. So randomness, to be calculated out. So it wants to be sure of something. Consciousness always wants to ensure itself, this is where I'm going, that's why it calculates coincidence out. As in always, that's a law. And non-existence belief changes the constant to the variables. So that is the premise coming forth from it as a second conclusion, which is really weird. And that's why you can't help people in bad situations if they're subject to someone using anything of the sort of Moira's law to manipulate that person, even if they don't know how it works. Because non-existence, to believe that non-existence is possible for a certain set of ideas, that changes the constant to what is the manifest. And if that part is intertwined with the calculation out of coincidence, then the constant is suddenly not constant anymore. Unless you manifested your spirit completely. Then it really is not of matter anymore to know this. But any given circumstance before, you really can't help anyone. Because you would negate the constant that is the person, and therefore the person would not be the person anymore, and the variables would change to the stream of ocean, and suddenly the constants that would also be suddenly a variable would cause constants in the stream of oceans, which would be decided by a variable that is interchanging to cause non-existence, and the person would vanish. So Moira's law. Reverted fate.